How is it that the man who proclaimed himself to be the reason Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India could not get himself a single seat in one state of the country?
If I, as a CEO, want to hire somebody like him, I got to figure out.
Okay, so this is a good point for the startup owners.
You tend to lose sight of how the world is actually looking at what you're doing.
Yeah, I think Prashant Kishore is a classic example of those people who think that storytelling is content.
See, now this is where the classic problem of somebody who knows how to scale from 1 to 10 doesn't know how to go from 0 to 1. Janavi, you know who I hate the most? People who are like doctors who go and start talking about the stock exchange because they think that because they're smart in one area of their life, they can be smart in other areas as well. You have these doctors all gathered around talking about surgery and suddenly talking about the stock exchange. And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of experts on LinkedIn who are suddenly waxing poetic about how Virat Kohli has changed their life because of management lessons that they've gleaned.
Because I think the person that we are going to talk about has himself done the same kind of googly that LinkedIn creators do. He's an expert in one field, and then he thinks that he can be the expert in that adjacent field just because he's done well in one field. If election is a magic show, Prashant Kishore is that pretty girl the magician uses to distract the audience.
Wow, that's punchy.
So Prashant Kishore is a former political strategist who gained his publicity with the Modi 2012 re-election campaign in Gujarat, then the NDA 2014 victory in the general elections. He worked with Nitish Kumar in the 2015 Bihar elections, gaining himself the vice presidency of JDU, and then his one and the only political loss, 2017 UP election for Congress that Gandhi's lost very, very badly. Some of his political successes have included the 2017 Captain Amrinder Singh's victory in Punjab, 2019 Andhra Pradesh election for Reddy, 2020 Delhi election for Arvind Kejriwal, 2021 Bengal election for Mamata Banerjee, and the Stalin victory in 2021 Tamil Nadu elections. So overall, I'd say a very, very rich political strategy career. But now we come to the question of the hour. Prashant Kishore's party, Jan Swaraj, managed to win 0 seats in the 2025 Bihar elections that saw the highest ever voter turnout of 66.91%. So how is it that the man who proclaimed himself to be the reason Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India could not get himself a single seat in one state of the country? Sure, the magician needs the pretty girl to make his magic trick work. But is the pretty girl the reason the magic trick works?
Correlation is not causation, right? And I think that I'm going to be the questioner here, Janavi. But what I want to know is how can we make this valuable to our audiences, right? So I know that a lot of people actually are in senior leadership positions. I don't want to give them bullshit gyan. I want to figure out what can we learn, one or two lessons that we can learn from this whole debacle that Prashant Kishore has had and how they can use it for their own lives. The second would be maybe even look at founders and what they can learn, because Prashant Kishore founded a political party and came a cropper over there. So trying to understand that. And let's just say that if you're somebody who is a growth oriented, ambitious professional, who's young and raring to go and chomping at the bit, how do you literally learn from failure? So this is something that I wanted to actually focus on, learning from failure, rather than giving gyan about how a consultant should not be a business owner or something like that, because then you have the ability to kind of prove the same thing wrong, right? There are many consultants who have become successful business people. Like Jeff Bezos, for example, was a financial analyst who then started Amazon. So I just wanted to stick to the true and narrow. So my question is, what is it about Prashant Kishore that actually made him a decent political strategist, a competent political strategist? He's had a checkered history probably, but more wins than losses. So what do you think is your view? What do you think?
I have a kind of a contrarian view where Prashant Kishore's political strategy career is concerned. To be very honest, what I have noticed about his career is he is not the horse that made the parties win. He is the horse that attached himself to the winning party. Now look at the careers that he's had. Mamata Banerjee has been an incumbent in West Bengal. Probably as predicted in the next election, there has been absolutely no loss for Mamata Banerjee. Prashant Kishore's victory for Mamata Banerjee wasn't a big thing. Then Delhi elections, Arvind Kejriwal was already riding the horse of Anna Hazare movement. There was the anti-corruption movement, and already because in Delhi there was an anti-incumbency with the center, Kejriwal's win was more or less very much forecasted. Even with Stalin, right? Stalin in the 2019 Legislative Assembly had won 38 out of 39 seats, and that was without Prashant Kishore. Right?
So what I'm hearing from you is that he is somebody who has gone for the ride and maybe added some value at a high or superficial level, but not really been.
Yeah, I think he has brought a different election campaigning to the election landscape. right? He is the one who basically brought in the digitization of election campaigns in India.
Yeah.
Earlier, it used to be all about the physical rallies and going door to door, etc. Prashant Kishore
Mm.
was the mastermind behind, Chai Pe Charcha and
Yeah.
Padyatras and
Yeah.
then the social media campaigns, the media buying, and all of that stuff. So, and that is what helped the Modi campaign also win in the 2014 elections, right?
So I'm just okay. So now you're giving me some input over here. Like if I'm a CEO of a ship that is already sailing successfully, okay, or if it's a strong ship and it is bound for growth or bound for scale, then using somebody like Prashant Kishore would be very useful for me,
Yeah.
right? But if I'm somebody who's in crisis mode or somebody who's trying to do some startup mode or turnaround or something, then maybe Prashant Kishore is not the right kind of strategist or storyteller for me.
Yeah,
Is that a fair thing to say?
that is a fair thing to say. Secondly, another point is that if you have a good product that needs to come out in the market, or if you already have a brand equity in the
Hmm.
market and you want to bring out a new product or a new line of brand or whatever, then somebody like Prashant Kishore, who is good with bringing out something that already has an equity, is a very good choice. But if you are new in the market, if your product is not
Hmm.
good enough, then perhaps Prashant Kishore won't be able to do the kind of magic that you require. If the
So he's,
product is,
yeah,
if you don't
yeah.
have magic, you can't expect a PR person to do magic for you, basically.
I think that it's a very rare PR person who will do the magic for you. I think Elon Musk is an amazing PR person, by the way, for his
He's
own
a product
company.
for himself, right?
Correct. But if I look at Prashant Kishore and as a professional storyteller, let's say he's a professional storyteller, and if I, as a CEO, want to hire somebody like him, I got to figure out, okay, what is my company really requiring? What kind of storyteller do I require? Do I need somebody who can help me scale up? Is it a turnaround situation? Is it a crisis situation? What exactly is it? So I don't think that he is somebody who can work across contexts. I think he's definitely wedded to the context wherein it's already sustaining success or reaching success, and then you just are just kind of giving it that bolster.
Yeah, it's like there's the saying, right? Ek race ka ghoda. So basically,
Hmm.
Prashant Kishore's strategy in all the election campaigns has been very much similar. It has been around Padyatra. It has been about criticizing the opposition government and all of that stuff. Now that works in states where there is anti-incumbency, but that does not work in states where there is pro-incumbency, like it was in Bihar, like it was in UP. Now, okay, so this is a good point for the startup owners, right? You have to see which markets or which sectors the anti-incumbency is actually there. Are you fighting against the L'Oreals of the world? Are you fighting against the HULs of the world? Or are you fighting against the Patanjalis of the world? If you're waging a war, for example, there was this influencer who created all the content against Horlicks and Coca-Cola and all of that, right? It worked because there was already an anti-incumbency sentiment against these companies, against these kinds of products, that people knew they were anti-health. Now,
Hmm.
if the same movement happens against Patanjali, if you are a CEO who is waging a war against Patanjali, right, it's not going to work. How can you say that a person like Baba Ramdev, who's been a career Ayurvedic doctor and yogi since the last 30-35 years, how can you say that you, as a 25-year-old, 30-year-old person who was in diapers when Ramdev had already established his audience, will be able to beat the kind of quality that Patanjali or Himalaya Ayurvedic products can deliver, right? So choosing your niche market and then choosing your communication strategy is very, very important, which is something that perhaps Prashant Kishore had forgotten in the Bihar elections. He went very much anti-incumbency, that Modi bura hai, Modi chor hai, Nitish Kumar chor hai, and all of that stuff, forgetting that he was the one who helped Nitish win. Now, he already had the data from 2015 election of Nitish, why Nitish lost. If he had used the gaps that Nitish was not able to, fulfill in Bihar, he would have made a very good niche for himself. Obviously, he would not have won, but at least he wouldn't have lost so very badly.
Hold on. So you've said a bunch of stuff, and I'm just trying to decode it a bit over here. I
Yeah.
think Baba Ramdev can be beaten by a 24, 25-year-old if the generations have changed, by the way. If the generations have changed and the younger generation is not connecting to Baba Ramdev anymore because they go to the gym and do 75 hard instead of yoga, and
Yeah.
suddenly then maybe a 25-year-old can. But if you're still talking to the same audience, and again, Baba Ramdev is controversial because he did coronal and stuff like that. So I'm not getting into that. But I think that the point is that if I look at if your audience is changing, if your demographic is changing, and we spoke about this in the Mamdani thing as well, then you need somebody who's a storyteller who's really apt towards this thing. So if I'm a founder, I just need to understand very clearly where I'm coming from. So if I'm a first time founder, I would say learn from Prashant Kishore's failure of becoming a founder,
Yeah.
right? Because if I look at the way in which he's founded this, it's based on absolutely a false premise that if I am good as a consultant, I can be a founder. And this is probably where all the LinkedIn gyan is, and it's probably right to an extent,
Yeah.
that are you really somebody who has the ability to do what? Is it just because you're bored? Is it because you've had enough? Are you, is it because you've, and so you need to do a psychological brain scan of your own thing before you start founding a company. I think that's one of the biggest lessons for any person, any wannabe founder or entrepreneur or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I have two lessons for the founders that I got from the Prashant Kishore thing, right? Now, first is when they go for investment pitches,
Hmm.
they bring in their work experience and they bring
Hmm.
in first-time founders, right? Not the career
Yeah.
founders, the first-time founders. They bring in the work experience that they've done in different companies. Perhaps it is the consultants and whatever, right? Prashant Kishore went with a similar kind of mindset that, see, I have helped Modi when I had helped this way. In
Yeah.
this case, the investors were the voters, right? But
Hmm.
the voters did not care that who you helped win. They did not care how many engagement your reels got. They cared about what you've done on the ground, which is exactly
Yes.
what the investors want. They want to know how much returns you have already received on your product, how much traction there is for the product, right? If you have not done anything in the past, if I cannot have your history as the proof of concept, that I need the proof of concept from your current product, which is something that founders generally don't do, especially for very high capital intensive kind of industries. They don't take that first traction as a proof of concept. The second lesson is that you need to find your niche within a niche. Now, what
Hmm.
Prashant Kishore did was he tried to be everybody. He tried to be everything for Bihar,
Hmm.
right? In some of the constituencies, his team performed very well. They got 58,000 votes. They got above 10,000 votes. They got 25,000 votes. Right now, in all of these constituencies, they already had the data. IPAC already had the data, right? So why not fight only in those constituencies? Why fight for all 238 constituencies out of 246? You would
I think that,
not any
yeah.
capital at all.
Yeah, no, this is a really critical lesson for me, as a founder, right? I think that if I, and I've been a consultant and I've been a founder, and I know that when you're a consultant, you are able to take a step back and be unemotional,
Hmm.
right? So when you're emotional about something, then you lose your sense of judgment, you lose your sense of balance, and you make decisions which are not really connected to any logic or any intelligence which you're capable of as a consultant.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you do as a founder is that you become so emotionally connected to your product, so emotionally connected to your service, that you tend to lose sight of how the world is actually looking at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And this is quite likely happening in Prashant Kishore's case, based upon whatever you're saying. And this is a big lesson for founders, right? I think, especially for a founder who is coming from a different field, not to suddenly become very emotional. Yes, sure, you have to be emotional enough for you to actually stand out and do whatever you have to do, but retain that lens that made you strong. Retain that lens and actually understand. Like, let me give you the Jeff Bezos example. He was a financial analyst, so the way in which he launched Amazon was not be everything to everybody. What
Yeah.
he did was he went to books first.
Yeah.
Okay, then he went to electronics, then he went to music. So he had a way in which he could literally take a step back from all of his passion and actually approach the whole thing as a very problem, as a problem to solve.
This is
Does that
something
make sense?
Misha case study. Misho case study is a very good example for. They
Right.
targeted the untargeted women, untapped women who wanted to resell their saris, who wanted to start businesses from their homes.
Hmm.
And now Misho is going for an IPO. It's just been a couple of years. They
Yes.
targeted their small audience so well that people fell in love with them. And then when they expanded, they already had the breadwinners with them. Right.
Yeah.
Once you have your cash cows with you, then it becomes very easy to expand. What founders do generally is, you're right, they get very emotional with their product. They think everybody would be interested in that product. I have done this, I have worked in these companies, I've raised these brands, etc., etc. But what they forget is you were not emotionally invested in those brands. The founder or the CEO was emotionally invested. You were you were looking from an outsider's perspective at what stupid things the CEO is doing or what the good things the CEO is doing. And so
Yeah.
you had a holistic perspective on what needed to be done in the market that was not your emotional investment. Now, as a
Yeah.
founder, it becomes very difficult to separate yourself from the product, and this is where you'll be this is exactly what tells whether you will be a good founder or not a good founder.
So let's just figure this one out a little bit more. Like, I mean, if I have to look at a young, ambitious, growth-oriented professional,
Yeah.
right? And if I want to look at somebody like Prashant Kishore, and I want to go beyond just conversing with him in a cafe or a bar and say, yeah, this guy lost and that guy lost, and yes, BJP rocks, or the Congress rocks, or the Congress sucks, or whatever it is, and actually try to utilize some of the lessons that you learn from failure, from this specific thing. If I'm a young person, what do I learn about, right? So, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do have. Okay, so one thing that I've seen young people do very often is they get very arrogant about their age. Right?
Mm.
When they go in a company, they think all the older people are completely outdated. And
Sure.
I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that a young person can make.
Mm.
Okay, their ideas might be out of date or their strategies might be out of date, but their experience is not out of date. They
Mm.
have all this time built a capital around them with their knowledge, with their expertise, with their reputation, with their network, all of these things, right? Now, Prashant Kishore did the same thing with Nitish Kumar.
Mm.
And this is what Arvind Kejriwal, in fact, did when he came through the Anna Hazare movement, right?
Mm.
Prashant Kishore completely threw away Nitish Kumar, and then he started bitching about Nitish Kumar and Narendra Modi and all of these people. You, as a person who has no political capital, you are an entrant into the market, right? You are an entrant into this office, into this space, rather than learning from these people what they do well, what they don't do well, or maybe learning at their feet, and perhaps talking about in your rallies, talking about you as a vice president of JDU at one point, whatever you learned from Nitish Kumar, what Nitish Kumar has done in Bihar since the last 10, 20 years, and now you are going to take it forward. What Nitish Kumar was not able to fill, you are going to fill in those shoes. That in itself would have been the political capital. But nowhere in none of his election speeches, Prashant Kishore came with this mindset that I have learned from Nitish Kumar,
Yeah.
right? Or I
No,
learned
so
from things. So
I'm glad. I'm glad as the younger person in this conversation you said it, because if I had said it, I wouldn't have been taken seriously as much as you have, right? So that's unfortunately the way it goes. Now I will probably go the other way, and not like I'm not like fighting your point. I'm making another point about younger people. I think it is very critical for a young growth oriented professional to know how much luck is there
mm,
in your growth.
yeah,
And I think what happens is, especially if you're young and growth oriented and ambitious, and if you succeed quickly, it's not just arrogance, but you have a mistaken understanding of what made it work for you. And the moment you actually think that, okay, these are the things that made it work for me, and you take it out of your context and put it somewhere else, you're going to fail. And this is where I've seen a lot of people actually fail miserably. I've seen people who have worked in Amazon and Googles and the Facebooks or the Metas of the world, who suddenly decide that they're going to do their gig. So they get a bunch of funding from venture capitalists who have been enamored by the fact that they have worked in these big companies and they have the right sort of thing, so we will back them. Seem to have a confident idea that they're going with. Come a cropper. And the reason why they come a cropper is because it's literally the difference between walking and swimming. If you're walking, you're and swimming, you're kind of transporting yourself from one place to another, but that's about it, right? Every other rule changes. The moment you understand that the sort of the rules have changed, and you have to understand how much luck has been there to actually, because there's a brand name, there's so many different things that have boosted you to, just because you handled a 10 million budget, right? Doesn't mean that you know marketing, right? If you moved something from 0 to 1, then probably you know more marketing than just handling a 10 million budget. Does that make sense?
that is very true. And then I would bring in the third point of, transitions are very important.
Mm.
As a young founder, if you want to be a creator, if you want to be a consultant, or if you want to be a founder, whatever you want to be tomorrow, if you worked in the big companies or you worked in the small companies, first of all, you're very right, play to your strengths. If you have brought in from 0 to 1, you're great at marketing, then maybe marketing is your strength. If you've handled a $10 million account, then maybe accounts is your strength, or maybe business management is your strength, right? So first of all, figure out what exactly is your strength, because these strengths don't transition from one to the other. They might help back them, but they don't transition from one to the other, right? Now the second point is that if you know that your interests lie somewhere else, or if eventually if you're not okay with the mentality of where you are currently, or the market that you are positioned in currently, then you have to find out the transition trend for yourself. You can't just say today I'm an athlete and tomorrow I will be a swimming champion. That is not how it happens. While you are a walking athlete, you also need to start training for swimming, right? You need to spend 5, 10 years learning how to swim so that you become an Olympian swimmer, right?
And let me connect this to our strengths, because what I think is storytelling and actually understanding how to build narrative is our strength. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I think young people tend to believe in their vision much more than their reality. So
That's
what tends to happen because of that is that their storytelling is all coming from their vision. Okay, but actually, the reality is very different. And when there is a big gap between the storytelling vision and what reality is, then it becomes a big issue. So choose your story very wisely, choose your archetypes very wisely, choose the way in which you're communicating very wisely. So that's one. The second is, if I'm looking at building a story, ask yourself, are you kingmaker? Are you king? What exactly are you playing, right? We don't know. In terms of Prashant Kishore's case, we know that he failed as a king, and he probably had mixed success as a kingmaker, a specific contextual kingmaker he was. Be very clear about what story you can play out. See, there's some basic problems that you have, right? Just because, see, your story has to connect with your reality. So if I look at, he is the archetypical, guy who's arrogant because he's intelligent, comes from a settled background, actually has a good, straightforward family life, and thinks that he's the doctor who knows the stock exchange, right? So I think that he is a kingmaker who tried to become king, knowing nothing about the terrain, being blinded by emotionality, right? Being blinded by emotionality, not using his strengths, getting into a different area. So he screwed up in a lot
Yeah.
of areas. He
I
screwed up in
think,
a lot of areas.
yeah, I think Prashant Kishore is a classic example of those people who think that storytelling is content. Prashant
Hmm.
went in with storytelling and the election rallies. What he forgot is what actually builds the story is your origin, is your strengths, is your narrative, is what your positioning statement should be. And then with the amalgamation or the result of it all is the communication. Your channel strategy. His channel strategy was wrong. His niche strategy was wrong. His positioning statement was wrong. He was the one who said if Nitish Kumar ka 25 votes ke upar aa gaya, to main seat ke upar aa gaya, to main politics chhod dunga. Right?
Hold on, no, that is gold. Like what you just said right now is a real, true, brilliant insight. Okay, what you said was Prashant Kishore. Prashant Kishore's storytelling was wrong because he thought storytelling was content.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at what he did for, say, the BJP, the Chai Pe Charcha, etc., he had the emotional distance to actually create a story for somebody else. I think he completely missed out on creating his own story because probably he would be too emotional about it. There is zero connect, right? There is no origin story, as you said. Now, if I have to redo something like this, I wouldn't go in Bihar. Why would I go in Bihar? Why would I choose Bihar as the battle place? Why would I? Fine, you come from Bihar, etc., etc. Look, as you said, look at your constituencies that you actually want to fight. What is your story? What are you trying to communicate? What
Even
is
if
your
it is
vision?
Bihar, even if it is Bihar, right? You know the ins and outs of Bihar because you've been in that place because you've run campaign for that place. But then choose your small constituencies, right? Who the hell
Small
is
constituency.
to find from all the 240 seats, dude? Find your
Correct.
constituencies, find those 38, 40 constituencies that will actually give you the vote. Make a very small party in a very small region, do some good stuff over there, and the next election you'll have something to show. Right? You forgot what your origin story was. What did Modi do? Modi
Hmm.
built his own hometown first. Right? Why was Lalu Prasad so famous? Because he built his hometown first. Same with Mulayam
Correct.
Singh Yadav. He built his
Yeah.
hometown.
Yeah.
Right? Why has Sonia Gandhi consistently been winning in
Yeah.
Raebareli?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. There's
it's
logic
not
there.
her
Yeah.
hometown, but her
I understand.
constituency.
Yeah.
Right? She knew every in and out of that constituency. Right? So choose your areas where you possibly can win. Or in fact, if I would put that for a consultant or a founder or a young professional or a CEO, right? Choose your strength, make it into a portfolio for the other project you do.
See, now this is where the classic problem of somebody who knows how to scale from 1 to 10 doesn't know how to go from 0 to 1. Okay, because from 1 to 10, you can actually do a chai pe charcha because you're already talking of an established leader and you're talking of how to spread the gospel from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't realize is that he's not at 1 going to 10, he's at 0 going to 1. So clearly, you have to use completely different strategies for storytelling.
Exactly.